The first thing that happened on my first day was a trash bag hitting my arm. I had just stepped out of the locker room, still tugging at a uniform that didn't fit right, when someone snapped their fingers like I was late for something. The bag came next, heavy, warm in the middle, smelled like old coffee and something sour that shouldn't still be liquid. Take this out, now. No pause. No check to see if I understood. No eye contact. The order was already finished before I had time to react. I stood there a second too long. Not frozen, just measuring. The hallway felt quieter than it should have. A few people slowed down. Nobody stopped. Nobody corrected her. That part stuck with me more than the trash. I bent, grabbed the bag, felt it stretch under my fingers. Cheap plastic. Close to tearing. I almost said something. I felt it rise in my chest, sharp and hot. Then I swallowed it, not because I was scared, because I didn't want to ruin the first day. That's what I told myself anyway, that it was temporary, that worse things had happened before. Honestly, I lied to myself a little to make it easier to move my feet. My name is Lucy. I am 42 years old. I walked past desks where people pretended not to notice me, past a glass wall where voices dropped the second I came near. Someone laughed too loud. Someone else checked their phone. The bag leaked onto my shoe. Sticky. I didn't stop. I dumped the trash at the service exit and stood there longer than necessary, listening to the building hum. Vent fans. Distant elevators. A rhythm that didn't care who I was. On my way back in, a voice floated down the hall. Not meant for me, not lowered enough, either. Something about the board meeting starting soon. About making sure everything looked right. That was when the feeling shifted. Not anger, not yet. More like a quiet note in the back of my head, telling me this place had already decided who I was supposed to be. The story you're about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team at Revenge AITA. It is told through one voice, one perspective, shaped by conflict, power, and consequence. Any resemblance to real people or events is intentional only in theme, not in fact. When I walked back toward the building, the woman who gave me the trash was already gone. Someone else waved me through without looking up. The doors closed behind me. The day kept moving. And I followed it, still carrying the smell on my hands, already noticing more than I was supposed to. By the time I got back inside, the bag smell was still on my hands. The same woman was waiting near the hallway corner, arms crossed now, eyes already moving past me like I'd finished existing. She pointed without turning her head. Different task, same tone, like the first one never happened. Someone a few desks over laughed, not loud, just enough. Janitor's slowing things down already. The word landed and stayed there. Janitor, not my name, not even a wrong guess, just a category. I kept moving because stopping would have meant choosing something, and I wasn't ready to choose yet. My cart rattled when I pushed it. The radio clipped to the handle sputtered in and out, static breaking through every few seconds. I fiddled with the dial. It didn't help. Neither did pretending it wasn't getting on my nerves. I passed a glass office where two men leaned close, voices low but careless. They didn't stop when they saw me. They just adjusted their stance like I was furniture. Make sure the help is cleared before they arrive. A pause, a nod. Decision made. Help. That word stuck harder than janitor. It felt smaller, more disposable. I slowed without meaning to. My first instinct was to correct them, not dramatically. Just a quiet, clean sentence. The kind that would end things. The kind I'd practiced in my head for years. It sat right behind my teeth. Then everything went tight. Chest, jaw, hands. I stood there pretending to adjust the cart while my brain ran in useless circles. Say it now and lose the day. Say nothing and swallow it. This is the part where you think I should speak up. I didn't. I moved again. Static cracked from the radio. Someone brushed past me and didn't apologize. Another person glanced at my badge, then looked away like the answer bored them. No one asked who I was. Not because they forgot, because they didn't need to know. They were comfortable. Comfortable enough to decide things out loud. Comfortable enough to believe no one around them mattered unless they already did. I wiped down a surface that was already clean. I listened. I kept my head down. And I started paying attention in a way that felt different now. Not curious. Not confused. Focused. I was emptying bins near the conference room when the cartwheel caught and squealed. I slowed to fix it. The door ahead was cracked open. Voices leaked out. Numbers don't line up. We pointed at facilities. A chair scraped. Someone laughed like it was obvious. That's what they're for. The words sat there, ugly and casual. No tension in the room, no fear, just planning. My stomach dropped. Not the movie kind, just heavy. I told myself I'd misheard. I hadn't. They kept going, confident enough to say it twice, louder the second time. Like repetition made it cleaner. Cleaning logs are always a mess. Easy. Another sound paper slapped on the table. A finger tapping. Approval. I stopped walking. Too long. Long enough that someone inside shifted and glanced toward the door. I adjusted the cart handle and pretended to be busy. The trash bag slid against my leg. Warm. It split near the seam. Coffee sludge ran down onto my shoe. Sticky. I looked at it. Then at the door. Then back at the mess. Nobody noticed. Or they noticed and didn't care. I stood there listening while they wrapped it up. No names, no faces. Just them and us. Already sorted. This is the moment you realize you didn't stumble into something by accident. You're standing in the middle of it. I rolled the cart away when the voices dropped, slower than before. My hands shook when I tied a new bag, not panic. Anger without a place to go. I could have knocked. I could have opened the door and ended it right there. Instead, I wiped the spill off my shoe with a paper towel and kept moving. I didn't interrupt. I didn't confront. I started paying attention in a different way. Less about surviving the shift. More about remembering everything, every word, every laugh, every assumption they made because they thought no one important was listening. By the time I reached the service elevator, the cart was lighter, the building felt heavier, and the day hadn't even started yet. I was standing still for maybe 2 seconds when a voice snapped from behind me. Don't hover. Either clean or move. The words hit the back of my neck, not loud, sharp, like a correction you give a dog. I turned halfway. The sentence was already forming, clean, simple. One breath and it would be done. My name, my role. The reason none of this made sense. Then the memory slid in and killed it. The boardroom last month. The long table. Faces that nodded while saying nothing. The phrase they kept circling back to. Quiet assessment. No warnings. We need to see how they really are. So I shut my mouth. I nodded instead. Took the rag. Wiped a surface that didn't need wiping. The person who corrected me went back to their screen, satisfied. Authority restored. I hated that feeling, the compliance, the way it made my shoulders drop. It felt fake, worse, it felt cowardly, like I was helping them misunderstand me. My hands smelled like disinfectant, strong, chemical. I scrubbed them in the sink until the skin went tight and pink. The smell didn't leave, it clung, like proof. Someone brushed past and muttered something about deadlines. Another voice called out from down the hall about coffee running low. Everything kept moving while I stood there replaying the moment I didn't take. This is probably where you're judging me. Fair. I leaned against the counter longer than necessary. Let the noise settle. Let the urge to correct burn itself out. I told myself this wasn't about pride. It was about seeing the whole shape of the thing before touching it. A door opened nearby. Laughter again. Comfortable, unchecked. I dried my hands on a paper towel and folded it too many times before throwing it away. The cart waited where I left it. Radio still spitting static. Same stupid rhythm. I pushed it forward. I wasn't here to win a moment. I was here to see it all the way through. Whatever that cost me. Whatever it cost them. A man stepped into my path like he'd been waiting for the timing to line up. Suit too crisp for the floor he was standing on. Smile pulled tight, like it hurt to keep it there. You shouldn't be around important people today. He didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. He angled his body just enough to block the hallway. Control without touching. I caught a glimpse of his badge as he shifted. Middle management. The kind that practices authority in mirrors. I'll take care of it, I told him. Already nodding. That seemed to please him. The smile relaxed. He glanced past me. 2 security guys by the elevators, not pretending. One of them adjusted his belt. The other looked straight at me, then away, like he didn't want to memorize my face. My heart was loud now, thudding in my ears. I checked the time on the wall clock as if I belonged there. Minutes. The board meeting was about to start. The building felt like it was holding its breath. Good, the manager said, stepping aside. We don't need distractions. I turned the cart. Slow. Careful. I kept my pace boring. The kind that looks obedient. The radio crackled. Static again. The elevator chimed behind me, sharp and too cheerful. Doors opening like an invitation I wasn't going to take. I nodded once more as I passed security. Gave them the version of compliance they expected. Shoulders slightly rounded, eyes down. It's strange how easy that part becomes when people assume it fits you. This is the part where I buy time by doing exactly what they think I'm doing. I rolled the cart past the elevators and took the corner like I was heading for the exit. Then I cut left instead. Quick, quiet, no running. Running draws attention. The executive restroom door was unlocked. I slipped inside and pulled it closed behind me, careful not to let it latch too loud. The noise outside softened. Footsteps moved on. Voices faded. I leaned the cart against the wall and locked the door. For the first time all morning, no one was watching me. I locked the stall and leaned my forehead against the metal divider for a second, not to pray, just to stop moving. The uniform came off first. It stuck a little, damp at the collar. I folded it anyway. Habit, then the suit. Fabric heavier, familiar in a way that hit low in my chest. Jacket on, sleeves straight, badge clipped where it belonged. I looked up. The person in the mirror didn't look brave or calm. She looked tired, steadier than this morning, like someone who'd already made the choice and was just catching up to it. Part of me thought this was insane. Walking into that room after everything I'd heard, after letting it go on, letting them think I was nothing. Another part of me felt the click, the kind you feel when a door closes behind you and you don't bother checking if it's locked. The hand dryer kicked on suddenly, a roar that filled the room, too loud, too aggressive. I let it scream until my hands were dry, then shut it off with my elbow. Silence dropped hard. Footsteps passed outside, laughter, someone talking about coffee. The world going on like nothing was about to change. This is the last quiet moment, I know that. I straightened the badge again. Not for them. For me. My name caught the light for a second before settling flat against my chest. I rolled my shoulders back once, then again, like I was shaking something loose. The door unlocked with a soft click. I opened it and stepped out. No one was in the hallway now. The cart sat where I'd left it. Radio still hissing static, like it was annoyed I'd abandoned it. I didn't look back. I walked toward the boardroom without rushing, without stopping. Each step felt heavier than the last, not because I was scared, but because I was done pretending this wasn't happening. The voices behind the glass grew clearer as I got closer. Papers shuffling, chairs moving, a throat clearing, rehearsed. I reached for the handle and didn't hesitate. The chairman cleared his throat and tapped the table once. Papers stopped moving, chairs squared up. Thank you for being prompt. Let's begin. I was still outside when he started the introduction. I didn't rush it. I opened the door on the second sentence and let it swing wide on its own. Every head turned. Recognition moved across the room in stages. Confusion first, then disbelief, then the kind of fear people try to swallow before it reaches their face. The woman who shoved the trash bag into my arms earlier went pale. Her mouth opened, closed. No sound came out. I walked in and stopped where everyone could see me. The room felt smaller now, tighter. We met earlier, I said, letting the words sit exactly where they landed. No smile, no explanation. A pen slipped from someone's hand and hit the table. Then the floor. It rolled, kept rolling. Nobody bent to pick it up. The chairman leaned back, eyes sharp now. He knew. He'd known before I walked in. This was the part he'd been waiting for. "This is Lucy," he continued, voice steady. "Our new chief executive officer." The title hit harder than the name. My legs were shaking, not enough to show. Enough to remind me I was still human. I stayed standing while the silence stretched. Someone swallowed, someone else shifted, then stilled when they realized movement was a mistake. The woman near the wall tried to speak. Nothing came out. Her throat worked again. Still nothing. I moved to the head of the table and pulled the chair back. The sound scraped louder than necessary. I sat, hands folded, badge visible. The board watched me. The executives didn't know where to look. The room had tilted, and they were all trying to stand straight on a floor that wasn't flat anymore. This is the sound of power changing rooms. The chairman nodded once. That was enough. I leaned forward and met the eyes of the woman who'd ordered me to take out the trash. Let's start with this morning. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't point. I didn't tell anyone how wrong they were. I opened my notebook and read, "Clear the help before they arrive." I looked up long enough to let the words land, then kept going. Cleaning logs are always a mess. Easy? A chair creaked. Someone shifted. The room smelled like burnt coffee, sharp and stale, like it had been sitting too long because no one wanted to interrupt the meeting to fix it. I didn't explain the context. I didn't need to. I named the floor, the time, who was standing where, who laughed, who nodded. I quoted it the way it was said, not cleaner, not nicer. A hand lifted halfway, then dropped back to the table. Another person opened a mouth, closed it, pressed their lips together. The board stayed still. No interruptions, no side comments. That was the agreement, and they kept it. I felt calm. That was the strange part. Not relieved, not satisfied, just steady. It scared me more than anger ever had. Anger burns out. This didn't. I turned a page. Don't hover. Either clean or move. Eyes slid away. Someone stared at the table like it might give them answers. I could see the moment they realized I wasn't pulling from memory. I was pulling from this morning. From minutes ago. From a version of themselves they hadn't expected to see again. This isn't revenge. It just feels final. I closed the notebook and set it flat. The sound was soft, but it ended the room. The chairman didn't look at me when he spoke. He looked at the others. We'll address this now. No delays, no committees. Decisions were called in order. Names attached. Access revoked. Investigations opened. Effective immediately. Effective immediately. Effective immediately. No one argued. Not because they agreed, because they knew the ground had already moved. I leaned back and let the process do what it was designed to do when it was finally pointed in the right direction. They started leaving the room one by one, not escorted, not dramatic. Just quiet removals, like someone turning off lights you didn't realize were still on. Human resources waited by the door with folders already labeled. No one announced what was inside them. The people receiving them knew. You could tell by the way their shoulders shifted, by how they stopped trying to make eye contact. Titles disappeared first. Access followed. Phones buzzed once, then went dead. Laptops were slid across the table and not slid back. One man tried to speak. He didn't get far. The chairman lifted a hand, palm down. The movement was small, final. The man sat back like the air had been let out of him. No statements. The chairman said, "We're past that." No apologies were accepted. A few were offered anyway, thin and rushed, the kind that arrive only when consequences do. They didn't land. They didn't change anything. A part of me wanted to soften it, not because they deserved it, because endings are heavy, and I could feel the weight of every decision stacking up in my chest. I kept my hands folded and let that part pass. Outside the room, someone tried their badge at the executive wing. Red blink, again, red. The sound was small, almost polite. The guard didn't look at them. He didn't have to. Power hates silence more than yelling. People packed up quietly, no speeches, no final pleas. The room emptied in the wrong direction, away from influence, away from doors that used to open automatically. I stayed seated until the last chair stopped moving. The board members gathered their papers, nodded once, and filed out. No congratulations, no relief, just work done the way it should have been done the first time. When I stood, the room felt different, not cleaner, more honest. The structure had shifted, not temporarily, not for show. Nothing went back to where it was. I turned off the lights myself and walked out, leaving the table bare, the seats empty, the changes already locked in. I stayed. Same building, same badge reader, different weight in the air. People moved slower now, like they were checking the floor before each step. Not fear exactly, awareness. My office wasn't fancy. Desk, chair, a window that showed more gray than sky. I opened the drawer and checked that the janitor badge was still there. I hadn't thrown it away. I didn't plan to. It sat on top of everything else, face up, like it wanted to be seen. Someone from operations knocked and stopped just inside the door, not asking for permission, not assuming it either. Balance. Security protocols are updated, they said. Access levels reset. Good, I told them. No extra words. They nodded and left. The quiet settled in after that. Too quiet. The kind that makes you notice your own breathing. I leaned back and stared at the ceiling longer than necessary, letting the noise in my head catch up. Some days, I think I went too far. I replay faces. The moment the red light blinked on the badge reader, the sound it made, small, final. Other days, I think I didn't go far enough, that there are still corners I didn't check, habits that survived because no one wanted to name them. I haven't decided which version of me I'm keeping. The chair across from my desk stayed empty. No one rushed in with congratulations. No one asked how I felt. That was fine. This wasn't about feeling good. It was about staying. You think stories end when the bad people lose. They don't. They keep going in smaller ways. In choices you make when no one's pushing back. In what you tolerate next. I sat there longer than I needed to. Hands flat on the desk. Listening to the building breathe around me. Here's the lesson I'm carrying forward. Whether I like it or not, power doesn't show up when you announce yourself. It shows up in how people treat you when they think you don't matter. And once you see that clearly, you don't get to unsee it. What you do with that knowledge is what decides who you become next.
The day my CEO fired me, she didn't raise her voice. She didn't warn me. She didn't even pretend to be surprised. She just ended my job like she'd finally checked something off her list. You applied to our competitor. That was how it started, mid-sentence, no hello, no lead-in. I was still pulling the chair back when the words landed, flat, clean, finished. I knew right then she wasn't asking. My name is Evelyn Hart, 42 years old. She said my name the way people do when they're tired of saying it. Then she moved on, already warmed up. 5 raise requests. 5 years. She recited them in order, like a grocery list she'd memorized while waiting for this moment. No anger, no disappointment, just facts, stacked neatly against me. The room smelled like burnt coffee, old, bitter. It made my stomach tighten. She leaned back, crossed her arms, and let out something that almost passed for a smile. Not the friendly kind, the kind that comes with relief. Good luck getting promoted over there. That was the part that stuck. Not the insult, the tone. Like she'd finally solved a problem. Like firing me fixed something that had been bothering her longer than it had been bothering me. I made one stupid choice. I smiled, I still don't know why. Shock, maybe, pride, or that reflex you get when you refuse to give someone the reaction they're fishing for. My face did it before my brain caught up. She didn't smile back. Human resources was already outside the door. That detail should have rattled me more than it did. Laptop access gone, email shut off. The mechanics moved fast, too fast, like the decision had been sitting there, waiting for a reason to look justified. I didn't argue, I didn't explain, I didn't defend myself. I told myself it was dignity. Honestly. It was simpler than that. I didn't want to cry in front of her. I didn't want to give her that. I picked up my bag, walked out when they told me to, felt the eyes on my back and kept going anyway. Near the end of that morning, after the worst of it had already happened, I found myself thinking about how calm she'd looked, about how ready she'd been. Like this wasn't a reaction at all. Like it was a plan finally allowed to happen. The story you are about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team at Revenge ATA. It is inspired by workplace power dynamics, quiet retaliation, and the moments people are pushed to stop protecting systems that never protected them. I didn't know it yet, but what happened next would make the way she ended things matter more than the ending itself. I rewind, but it doesn't come back in a straight line. It's more like flashes, a calendar reminder, a closed door, a nod that meant nothing. The first time, she leaned forward and called my work critical. The word landed heavy, like it should have meant something. Then she smiled, quick and practiced, and talked about timing. Not this year, next cycle. Company focus, the second time. She didn't bother leaning in. She stayed standing, phone face down on the desk, said the budget was tight, said leadership had to be careful. I nodded like I understood. The third time came after a rollout nearly collapsed. I stayed late. Fixed what other teams broke. The praise came fast, the raise didn't. She tapped a folder, sighed, and said she hated having these conversations. That part annoyed me more than the no. By the fourth time, I already knew the script. She used different words, same ending. My email notification chimed when her reply came through, and my stomach sank before I even opened it. That sound started to feel personal, I stayed anyway. That's on me. I told myself it was loyalty. Or stability. Or being smart. The truth is uglier. I was afraid of starting over. Afraid of being the difficult one. Afraid that if I pushed too hard, I'd prove whatever quiet doubt she had about me. There's one moment I still cringe at. A coworker muttered about pay in the break room. I defended her. Said leadership had a bigger picture. Said we all had to be patient. The words came out smooth. Too smooth. I remember the look I got, not angry, pitying. Later, in her office, she called me indispensable, not replaceable, not promotable, indispensable. The way she said it pinned me right where I was. I walked back to my desk and opened my inbox. The hum of the lights, the same chair, the same title. I kept doing the work. I kept hitting the marks. I kept waiting for a yes that never showed up. Looking back, the pattern is obvious. At the time, it just felt normal. This one breaks something, not loudly, not all at once. Just enough that I noticed the crack. The rollout should have failed. Everyone knew it. The timeline was a joke. 2 teams dropped the ball and pretended not to see it roll. I stayed late, again, cleaned it up, again. When it worked, my name floated around the meeting like an afterthought that couldn't be ignored. She called me in that afternoon. The praise came first. It always did. Smooth, comfortable, like she was warming up her voice. Exceptional work. A pause. Long enough to feel intentional. You're irreplaceable. That word should have stopped me cold. It didn't. I nodded instead, already reaching for the folder I'd brought. Metrics, comparables, everything she'd asked for the last time. Her smile didn't move when she said no. Not this cycle, not with current priorities, not when leadership had to be careful. She tapped the edge of the desk, like the conversation had reached its natural end. I didn't argue. That part scares me now. How easily I accepted it. How quickly I folded the papers back into my bag. At home, I opened my laptop and stared at it longer than I want to admit. The fan whined, thin and tired, like it was annoyed I'd woken it up for something pointless. I didn't feel angry. I felt exposed, like I'd finally admitted something I'd been avoiding. I updated my resume, quietly, no dramatic edits, just facts, titles, projects, results. It felt less like rebellion and more like paperwork for a truth I couldn't ignore anymore. I almost closed the browser, almost told myself to sleep on it, almost chose comfort again. Then I hit submit. The regret came fast, immediate, sharp. My stomach flipped like I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. I sat there, hands off the keyboard, waiting for something to happen. An alert? A consequence. Nothing did. This is the part I don't like admitting. I hoped no one would notice. Not because I was ashamed, but because I wasn't ready to explain myself yet. I shut the laptop. The room went quiet. For the first time in a long while, I didn't set an alarm to stay late. The interview was calm. Too calm. No one rushed. No one tried to sell me anything. That alone threw me. They didn't ask where I saw myself in 5 years. They didn't skim my resume. One of them slid a printed diagram across the table. Internal workflow. My workflow. Something I'd built quietly and never presented outside the company. This part reduced delays, one of them said, tapping the corner. You were the one who rerouted approvals. I nodded before I could stop myself. My pen kept clicking in my hand. I couldn't get it to stay still. Another voice joined in, softer but sharper. That fix never made it into the case study. Why? I shrugged. No one asked for it. That landed differently than I expected. They exchanged a look, not impressed, not surprised, more like confirmed. The questions stayed narrow, specific. They asked about decisions I'd made under pressure. Times I overrode leadership, times I didn't. Each answer felt like a test I hadn't studied for but somehow recognized. Then one of them leaned back and said my CEO's name, not casually, not as background. How long has she been signing off on your work without adjusting your title? The pen clicked too loud this time. I stopped it with my thumb. That's not really relevant, I said, and immediately hated how defensive it sounded. Silence followed, not awkward, measured. We asked because leadership patterns matter, someone else added, especially when talent stays longer than it should. No one smiled, no one reassured me. By the time they thanked me for coming, my shoulders were tight in a way I couldn't shake. Walking out, I felt watched without being followed, like I'd stepped into something already in motion, in the elevator. I replayed the questions, the way they'd skipped small talk, the way they already knew the answers. I told myself I was reading into it. I'm good at that. I always have been. Still, when I got back to my desk later that day, the clicking pen stayed in my drawer. I didn't trust my hands to hold it steady anymore. Back to the aftermath. My screen went dark while I was still logged in. Cursor frozen mid-blink. I hadn't even closed the file. That stung more than anything she'd said upstairs. Words I could brush off. That action felt surgical. A guy from IT hovered near my desk, not meeting my eyes. He cleared his throat like he wanted to apologize but didn't know how without getting in trouble. "Access is disabled," he muttered, already stepping back. I nodded. Not because I agreed, because nodding was easier than letting my face do whatever it was about to do. I packed fast, too fast, family photo, notebook, charger. Pens dumped straight into the box without thinking. Like if I slowed down, something ugly would spill out of me and land on the carpet. The box smelled like old cardboard, dry, dusty. Final. People watched, heads popped up, then disappeared. One coworker opened her mouth like she might say something, closed it again. I don't blame them. I probably would have stayed quiet too. Silence is safer when you're still inside the building. Someone from HR walked a step behind me, close enough to be felt, not touching, didn't need to. The message was clear. At the elevator. She handed me a printed sheet. Final paycheck details. Benefits end dates. Clean formatting. No wasted space. If you have questions, email the address at the bottom, she said, already turning away. The doors closed. My reflection stared back at me like it wasn't sure what just happened. Outside, I set the box in my car and sat there with both hands on the wheel. Didn't start it, didn't check my phone, just breathed until the shaking settled enough to pass for calm. What surprised me wasn't the fear. It was the quiet, no alarms, no follow-up calls, no dramatic fallout, just absence, spreading fast. When I finally pulled out of the lot, the badge was still in my pocket. I didn't throw it away, not yet. I needed to feel the weight of it a little longer. The call came the next morning, unknown number, Boston area code. Her voice was careful, polished, the kind that tries to sound human without committing to anything. "This is Marlene, I'm on the board." She didn't say the company name, didn't need to. We both knew why she was calling. I wanted to reach out personally. She continued, smoothing the space between words. "Yesterday moved fast. Faster than it should have." I leaned against the counter and stared at the sink. A single cup drying upside down. I hadn't done dishes the night before. She mentioned compensation like it was a spreadsheet issue, a line item that could be adjusted if someone had caught it earlier. "We're open to revisiting your package," she said. "Title as well. There's room." Room. After 5 years of no room, I almost said yes. That's the part I don't like admitting. My mouth actually opened. My neighbor's dog started barking through the wall, sharp and sudden, like it was reacting for me. I pictured the office, the desk, the folder sliding back toward me, the word irreplaceable used like a leash. "It's not about the money," I said. And my voice wobbled enough to give me away. If it were, this conversation would have happened earlier. She paused. Long enough to signal calculation. "We value you," she offered. "Sometimes leadership misses things." I pressed my thumb into the edge of the counter until it hurt. Misses things. 5 times isn't a miss. It's a habit. I've already moved on. I said, not clean, not confident. Just true. Another pause. Shorter this time. "If you reconsider, I won't," I cut in. Too quick, too sharp. But it needed to be said that way. She exhaled, quiet but audible. The sound of someone realizing leverage had expired. "We wish you the best," she said, already closing the door she'd opened. After the call ended, the apartment felt smaller, not emptier, smaller. Like something heavy had finally been lifted and my arms didn't know what to do next. I slid my phone face down and let the dog barking fade on its own. The other company didn't apologize for anything. That stood out right away. No speech about unfortunate timing, no awkward sympathy about how things ended for me. They didn't ask me to explain myself or clean up the story. The call jumped straight past all that. "We'd like to move forward," the woman from the interview panel said. No build-up, no easing in, just a statement, like the decision had already settled. She slid the offer across the table later that afternoon. Not physically, digitally, clean attachment, no extra commentary. The number made my stomach flip. Not excitement, not relief, shock. It was almost double what I'd been making, more than I'd asked for across all 5 denied raises combined. I read it twice, then a third time slower, like maybe I'd misunderstood a word. "This reflects the scope of the role," she added, casual. "And the experience you already bring. No mention of loyalty. No warning about expectations. No reminder to be grateful." My hands shook while I scrolled. Not badly, just enough to notice. I hated that part. I'd walked out of my old office without a tremor. And here I was reacting to someone treating me fairly. I asked one question, not about money, about authority, where decisions would land, who signed off on what. She answered without hesitation. "Clear lines, clear responsibility. We don't hire people to keep them in place," she said. "That wouldn't make sense." I muted the call for a second and stared at my own reflection in the dark screen. Looked older than I felt, calmer than I expected. Here's the part I won't dress up. I thought about backing out, about asking for time, about pretending I needed to think. You ever notice how risk feels bigger when it's earned? I signed. The relief came first, then fear, sharp and immediate, like stepping onto ice and trusting it to hold. No confetti, no victory speech, just a quiet understanding settling in. I couldn't undo this. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't want to. I was told to stay out of one decision. Formally, on record. It came through as a calendar invite with a short note attached. No explanation, no apology. Just a line that said my involvement would be a conflict, given my recent transition. The wording was careful, legal, finished. I didn't argue. I didn't ask what the decision was about. I didn't pretend to misunderstand, noted. I replied and left it at that. On the call. I stayed muted. The hum filled my headphones, steady and dull, like a machine breathing on its own. Names were mentioned, timelines outlined, risks weighed. No one asked for my input. That part was intentional. Someone said my old company's name, no edge to it, just another line item. I watched the screen light up and dim as people spoke. Faces leaned in, pulled back. The conversation moved forward without me, and I felt something shift in my chest. Not loss, relief, mixed with a small spike of unease. I used to be the one keeping these things upright, filling gaps before they turned into problems, translating chaos into something presentable. Now, the structure was standing without my hands on it, and that was both unsettling and freeing. At one point, someone said, "We'll finalize after the review." And the tone told me everything I needed to know. The momentum was already there. I closed my laptop before the meeting officially ended. No one noticed. No one needed to. I left early that day. Walked out without checking my phone. Didn't scroll. Didn't refresh my inbox. I knew whatever was happening would happen whether I watched it or not. On the ride home, my body kept waiting for the familiar buzz of urgency. The feeling that something would collapse if I wasn't paying attention. It didn't come. The quiet followed me instead. Not empty, just different. For the first time since I'd left, I wasn't holding anything together. And nothing broke in my absence. I didn't see the email first, someone else did. It came up halfway through a routine check-in, the kind where everyone pretends nothing interesting is happening. The meeting paused. A name popped up in the chat. Mine. "Have you seen this yet?" I shook my head before realizing the camera was off. The pause stretched just long enough to feel deliberate. "The contract's been terminated," one of them said. Careful tone, measured, like handling glass, effective immediately. Another voice followed. Quieter. "It's comprehensive." They forwarded it after the call, no commentary attached, just the message. I opened it once, then again. Big client, biggest one my old team had, gone in a single paragraph. No blame, no drama, just a clean statement of decision and a timeline that didn't leave room for negotiation. I scanned the recipients: legal, finance, operations. My old CEO wasn't copied. That detail landed heavier than the loss itself. At the bottom, One line stood out. Transition lead assigned to oversee handoff and continuity. External appointment. My name. I laughed. Short, sharp. The sound surprised me as much as it would have surprised anyone else. It wasn't joy. It wasn't spite. It was recognition. A message came through right after. From someone I hadn't worked with directly before. We'll need your guidance to keep this clean. No apology, no acknowledgement of history, just expectation. I typed back one sentence. Neutral. Professional. Agreed to the timeline. I didn't reach out to my former team. I didn't check LinkedIn. I didn't wait for gossip to catch up. None of that felt necessary anymore. What I felt wasn't victory. It was closure, settling in quietly. The kind that doesn't ask permission or make announcements. I shut my laptop and sat there for a minute, letting the weight of it register. The control I'd once been under was gone, not transferred. Gone. Whatever fallout came next would unfold without my involvement. And for the first time, that wasn't a threat. It was just a fact. I never talked to her again. Not once. Not by accident. Not through mutual contacts or forwarded messages. I don't explain myself. I don't correct the version of the story she probably tells in closed rooms, where she still sounds reasonable and I still sound difficult. It isn't my job anymore. Her authority doesn't disappear overnight. That would have been dramatic. It goes another way, slowly, publicly. First, she's no longer copied on decisions that used to require her approval. Then her name stops coming up in meetings that matter. Then someone else starts answering questions she used to control. That part matters. Quiet demotions leave longer shadows. I start my new role the following Monday. No ceremony, no speeches, just a calendar full of meetings and people who expect answers instead of loyalty. The first time someone asks for my decision and waits without pushing back, it throws me. I answer anyway. My voice doesn't shake, but my fingers still do. Some days I flinch when emails come in, not because I'm afraid of being fired, because my body remembers what it felt like to be one message away from being dismissed. That doesn't disappear just because the title changes. There's one detail I notice more than anything else. The sound of my office door closing. Solid, final, not dramatic, just mine. I sit there longer than I need to sometimes, listening to the quiet settle in. I don't feel healed. That word feels too clean for what this is. I feel separate. Separated from the version of myself who kept waiting for permission. From the part that thought endurance would eventually be rewarded. I haven't decided what I owe myself next. Ambition used to feel urgent. Now it feels optional. Here's the lesson I carry forward. Whether I like it or not, staying loyal to a place that benefits from your silence will cost you more than leaving ever will. Walking away doesn't fix everything, but it ends the damage. And sometimes, ending the damage is the strongest choice you get to make.
The moment that still sticks starts with a question that shouldn't have been a question. Why are you working out here? A beat? And where's the executive office I gave you before my lungs even figured out what to do? Someone stepped into the space. A smile slid in first. I needed the space more. No one laughed. No one shifted. Nothing corrected it. The pause after that wasn't polite. It wasn't neutral. It felt like a door closing somewhere I couldn't see. I didn't explain. I didn't jump in. I didn't do the thing people expect when they think you've been wronged. I stood there with my laptop pressed against my ribs like it could anchor me. The smell of burnt coffee drifted from a mug on the edge of the table. I locked onto that, focused on not saying the wrong thing too fast. My name is Daisy, 32 years old. That sentence felt heavier than it should have. Like saying it out loud would put me somewhere I wasn't standing anymore. The CEO didn't look at me after that. His eyes stayed on the smile, on the confidence, on the version of events that had just been offered up so casually it almost sounded official. Someone cleared their throat. Someone else checked a watch. The room decided something without asking me first. I could feel it in the way the air settled. This is usually where I tell myself to be patient, to wait for the right moment, to not make it awkward. I swear I've been living off those instincts for years. They've never done me any favors. I adjusted my grip on the laptop, said nothing, let the silence stretch long enough that it stopped feeling like mine. The story you're about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team at Revenge AITA. It is inspired by real workplace dynamics, real power imbalances, and the kind of moments people carry longer than they expect. That's all. back to it. When the CEO finally moved again, it wasn't toward me. It was toward the hallway, toward where I'd been working, toward the space that suddenly felt temporary in a way I couldn't explain yet. I followed without being told. Not because I knew what was happening, because when something shifts like that, you learn fast not to be the last one to notice. He didn't stop after that. That was the part that got to me. Words kept coming, smooth and practiced. Temporary, efficiency, resource alignment. The kind of language that sounds reasonable if you don't look too closely at who it pushes out of the way. A hand gestured toward the hallway. Not at me, past me. Like I was part of the furniture now. This setup works fine. Floated out, casual, almost generous. Like he was doing me a favor by not calling it a downgrade. The CEO stayed quiet. No interruption, no correction, just listening, honestly. That silence felt heavier than if he'd snapped. Silence means evaluation. Silence means someone's being weighed. I stared at the edge of the table and replayed every moment from the last few weeks where I'd swallowed something instead of pushing back. The email drafts I softened. The meetings where I nodded instead of asking why. I didn't want to be difficult, didn't want to be the person people sighed about afterward. I told myself it was strategic. That patience counted for something. The copier behind us made this grinding sound, like it was choking on paper. Loud, annoying, nobody reacted, not even a flinch. That's when it hit me how used to this room was to discomfort that didn't belong to the right people. A comment landed about priorities, about how some roles required visibility more than others. The implication hung there. I was visible enough without walls. I shifted my weight. The laptop slipped a little in my arms. No one noticed. This is the part where I usually talk myself out of speaking. I tell myself it's not worth the energy. That correcting someone takes more effort than letting them be wrong. I could feel that instinct kick in again, right on time, like muscle memory. The manager kept filling the space, confident, uninterrupted. Each sentence stacked on the last until it sounded less like an explanation and more like a conclusion that had already been agreed on. The CEO finally looked up. Not at me. At the words still hanging in the air, the talking slowed, just a fraction. Like someone sensing the ground might not be as solid as they thought. I didn't move. I didn't say anything. I let him keep building whatever he thought was settled. The CEO finally stepped in. Not loud, not sharp. Just firm enough to stop the flow. That office wasn't informal. A pause. Papers shifted. Someone stopped tapping their pen. It was approved. Logged. Assigned. To her. The words landed clean. No decoration, no room to spin them. I didn't feel relieved. My chest tightened instead. Because now there was no confusion to hide behind. This wasn't a mix-up or a scheduling hiccup or a bad assumption. Someone had looked at a decision and decided it could be bent. The manager's posture changed. Shoulders forward, pace quickened. Operational need came out fast, then short-term, then something about alignment. The cadence of someone trying to outrun a problem by stacking phrases on top of it. I stared at the corner of the table and remembered the email from weeks back. One notification, one clean ping, nothing after. I'd stared at my inbox that afternoon and told myself it meant later, that it meant busy, that it meant not now. I swallowed, adjusted my grip on the laptop again. My fingers had started to ache. The CEO's gaze didn't move, not impressed. Not irritated, just waiting. Another explanation tried to surface. It trailed off halfway through, like it lost confidence mid-sentence. A chair shifted. The room felt smaller without anyone actually stepping closer. This is where I usually doubt myself. I start wondering if I misunderstood something obvious, if I missed a memo, if I'm being dramatic about a detail that doesn't matter as much as I think it does. But the word assigned kept echoing. Clear, specific. Not a favor, not a courtesy. A decision that had already been made. I glanced up, caught the manager watching the CEO instead of me now. That told me more than any explanation had so far. The conversation didn't stop. It slowed. Like everyone realized the ground had changed and no one was sure where to put their weight next. The shift happened quietly. A laptop turned. A screen angled so everyone could see. Access logs first. My badge history scrolled past. Green, 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 then red, disabled per request. That phrase sat there like it had always belonged. Another file opened. This one's slower. Paperwork. The kind that pretends to be boring so no one looks too hard. My name at the top. My role spelled out clean. A signature at the bottom. I leaned forward without meaning to. The angle was wrong. Too neat. Too patient. When I sign things, I rush. I loop letters too wide. I press harder at the end. My finger tapped the screen once. Not dramatic. Just enough. That's not my signature. The words didn't shake. My hands did. The air kicked on hard. Louder than it needed to be. Cold rushed across the room. No one looked at me. Not even the person who'd been talking the most. Eyes went to the screen instead. Like if they stared long enough it might correct itself. Someone tried to speak. Stopped. Tried again. The sentence never finished. I stayed standing. Didn't sit. Didn't explain. I didn't owe anyone an essay on how I write my own name. The manager shifted his weight. A heel scraped. He didn't look at the screen. He watched the CEO's face instead, waiting for a reaction he could work with. This is the part people don't talk about. How your name can stop feeling like yours the moment it shows up in the wrong context. How easily it can be turned into permission. I felt stupid for not checking sooner. For trusting that a locked door meant a glitch. For assuming nobody would be bold enough to do this in writing. The CEO leaned closer to the screen, not angry. Focused. Per request, he repeated, slower this time. No one filled the space after that. No clarifying speech, no cleanup language. Just the sound of the system humming and the quiet realization settling in that something had crossed a line it couldn't step back over. The question landed without ceremony. Did you follow up? Yes, 3 times. It came out clean, no pause. That part surprised me. A beat passed. Then another screen turned toward the center of the table. Email logs this time. Dates lined up. Subjects I recognized immediately because I'd stared at them too long when they didn't get answers. Every message showed as opened. Every single one. No replies. I felt my face heat up. Not because I'd sent them. Because I hadn't copied anyone else. I hadn't pushed it higher. I told myself escalating would make things awkward. That it would look impatient. That it might come back on me later. Stupid, honestly. Someone made a small noise in their throat. Like they were about to soften it. The CEO lifted a hand just enough to stop that instinct. These were read, he said. Slow. Not accusing. Precise. The room went still again. A different kind of still. The kind that shows up when deniability runs out. I stared at the timestamps. Each open felt intentional now. Not missed. Not delayed. Chosen. A phone buzzed on the table. Short, sharp. No one reached for it. Whoever it belonged to, let it die where it sat. I shifted my weight. My shoulders dropped a fraction. Something inside me finally stopped trying to be polite. This is where I usually rewrite things in my head. Convince myself silence means busy, or later, or not now. I've built entire explanations out of that habit. Watched it save other people a lot of responsibility. The CEO leaned back slightly, eyes still on the screen. So, he said, not looking at anyone in particular, these weren't missed. No one argued that. No one tried to spin it into a misunderstanding. The emails sat there doing their own work. I let my hands relax at my sides. For the first time since this started, I didn't feel like I needed to explain my tone or defend my patience. The silence had already done enough explaining on its own. The screen stayed up as the conversation shifted. Access, timing, requests. The word per came back into play again, and just like that, the problem stopped being about whether I'd followed up and became about why someone needed me to stop. That's when his eyes finally landed on me, not curious, not angry, evaluating. This isn't about access, he started, voice steady again. It's about readiness, seniority, presence. The words stacked neatly, like they'd been waiting for their turn. I almost laughed. Almost. The sound got stuck somewhere behind my teeth. Last quarter, that same voice had floated across a conference room while my slides were still up. Strong performance, consistent results, exactly what we need. People had nodded, someone had clapped once, then stopped because clapping at work always feels weird. None of that came up now. The CEO didn't look impressed. He didn't look offended either. He just leaned back slightly and tapped a finger once against the table. Then why does the system still list her as the assignee? No edge, no volume, Just a question placed carefully in the middle of the room. The chair scraped as my manager shifted. A small sound, loud enough. His throat cleared. Once, then again. Well, the system hasn't been updated yet. Came out slower than before. Less confident. The rhythm was off. The CEO's gaze dropped to the screen, stayed there. Everything else was updated. Silence followed. The kind that makes people adjust their posture without realizing it. Someone folded their hands. Someone else uncrossed their legs. The room waited. This was the part where the story was supposed to save him. The version where I was overreaching. Where I misunderstood my place. Where my name was still there because of an oversight. But the screen didn't move. My name didn't disappear. The facts stayed stubborn. I watched his jaw tighten just slightly. The confidence drained in real time, not all at once, but enough to notice. No one rushed in to help him this time. No friendly translation, no reframing. The narrative he'd been leaning on had nowhere left to go. The CEO closed the laptop with a soft click. "All right," he said, and just like that, the ground shifted again. This part still catches me off guard. He didn't turn to me, didn't ask how I felt, didn't ask me to walk through it from my side like people usually do when they're pretending to be fair. His chair shifted just enough to face the other direction. "By what authority did you sign for her?" The room tightened. My manager opened his mouth and kept going, like momentum alone could save him. Words tumbled out faster now, explanations stacked on top of each other. Temporary, operational, intent. The rhythm was wrong, desperate. A hand went up, calm, flat, stop. That single word landed heavier than everything before it. The CEO reached for his phone without looking away. A name pulled up, a quiet instruction delivered. Legal was looped in before anyone had time to recalibrate. Then his eyes flicked to the screen still open on the table. Revoke his access. Came next. No emphasis. No warning. Now. Someone at the far end of the room moved quickly, fingers on a keyboard. A soft confirmation tone followed. Short, final. The confidence drained out of the space all at once. Not dramatic. Just gone. Like someone pulled the plug and forgot to announce it. My manager tried again. Slower this time. Careful. The words didn't make it past the first few syllables. That won't be necessary. Cut in cleanly. No one spoke after that. No one checked their phone. No one shifted. Even the room seemed to pause, like it was waiting for instructions. I stayed where I was, hands loose at my sides, heart loud but steady. I didn't feel victorious. I felt clear. This is the moment people think they want. The confrontation, the exposure, the sudden drop. What surprised me was how quiet it was, how procedural, how little space there was for emotion once the system decided something didn't belong. The CEO closed his phone and stood. "We'll take it from here." The meeting didn't end. It changed shape. And nothing in that room was ever going back to the way it had been. There was no explosion after that, no raised voices, no security walking anyone out, just process. The word audit showed up first. Quiet, clinical. It landed in the room like paperwork instead of punishment. A timeline was mentioned. Scope, review. Nobody rushed to explain what that meant. They didn't have to. Access started disappearing before the meeting was even officially over. Someone confirmed it out loud, like a checklist item. Approvals paused. Permissions pulled. Things he used to sign off on without thinking suddenly required someone else. The executive office came back to me the same way it had been taken. No announcement, just a line update in the system. A calendar change. A door that opened again. My manager nodded through all of it. Small nods, cooperative nods. The kind people use when they think compliance might still save them. It didn't. He tried to say he understood. The words came out careful, measured, like he was choosing them from a shelf he'd practiced with before. Nobody engaged with that version of him, not even a polite acknowledgement. The meeting wrapped without ceremony. Chairs slid back, screens closed. People stood and filed out in the same order they always did. The room smelled like old carpet and long days. That end-of-day office smell that makes everything feel heavier than it is. I stayed seated for a moment longer than necessary. Not because I was stunned, because I was adjusting. This is the part people don't expect. The quiet, the lack of spectacle. Accountability without an audience. It's unsettling in a different way. There's no release. No moment where you get to breathe out and feel like it's over. The CEO paused on his way out. Not close, not personal. Your access is restored, he said, already turning away. That was it. No apology, no reassurance, just a correction. I gathered my things and stood. The office was mine again on paper, in practice. Everything felt shifted. Power had moved, but not loudly, and that made it harder to pretend it hadn't happened at all. HR reached out 2 days later, calendar invite. Neutral subject line. A woman I'd only met once before sat across from me, hands folded, voice careful. Mediation is an option. I didn't hesitate, no. That answer surprised both of us. I could tell by the way she paused, like she was waiting for me to add a reason that made it easier to file. What would you like instead? I want to transfer. Same building, different floor, different reporting line. I said it plainly, like I'd already practiced it in my head. Because I had some time between getting my access back and realizing I didn't feel relieved, the decision had settled. She blinked. You know you don't have to move. I know. The paperwork came next. Dates, approvals, no pushback. That part went faster than I expected. Word traveled, the way it always does. People stopped by my desk with that half smile that means congratulations mixed with confusion. A couple of them said I'd handled it well. One asked why I wouldn't want to stay after everything. I shrugged. Didn't give them the version that made sense to me. Not everyone needs the whole story. My manager passed me in the hallway later that week. Looked past me like I'd been replaced by a glass wall. That was new. Before, he'd at least pretended I existed. Now there was nothing to perform. I noticed how light that made me feel. Not powerful, lighter. There's a moment after something like this where people expect you to savor it, to sit in the victory, to make it mean something big. I didn't feel like doing any of that. I packed up my things slowly, not dramatically, just deliberately. Each item off the desk felt like closing a door I didn't want to keep reopening. By the time the transfer went through, the office was quiet again. My name was still on the door I'd been given back. I didn't go inside. I took the elevator down instead and didn't look back. He was gone a few months later. No announcement, no farewell note. His meetings vanished from the calendar one by one, like someone erasing a pencil line they never meant to keep. People stopped saying his name out loud. Work moved on. It always does. I still had the executive office. The door opened when I wanted it to. My name stayed on the system. Nothing about that part got reversed, and yet, I didn't live in there. Some days I worked from a different floor, sometimes from a conference room no one used anymore. Once or twice from a desk near the window where the light was bad but the silence was honest. Old habits, maybe. Or a quiet reminder that space only matters if you let it decide who you are. I didn't forgive anyone. I didn't sit down with anyone to clear the air. There were no closure meetings, no clean wrap-up conversations that tied everything into a bow. I let the story end where it ended. People tried to offer explanations for me. They said things like resilience and growth. They said I came out on top. I nodded when it was easier than correcting them. The truth was simpler. I made a choice that couldn't be undone. I stepped out of a place where my name had been used without me, and into one where it couldn't be touched at all. That decision cost me familiarity. It cost me comfort. It also bought me something I hadn't had before: clarity. Here's the lesson I keep. The one that doesn't sound inspirational and probably isn't meant to. Power doesn't always show up as a win you can point to. Sometimes it looks like leaving something behind while everyone else is still watching the door. Sometimes it's choosing not to negotiate your place ever again, even when the system finally offers it back. I didn't take it back. I walked away with it.